This is Scott Freck, Executive Director of the Eugene Symphony. Our 51st season continues this month as we perform Gustav Mahler's Sixth Symphony. In a letter to fellow composer Jan Sibelius, Mahler once wrote, "A symphony must be like the world. It must contain everything." Well, he certainly heeded his own advice in a very literal way in this massive work, which is scored for enormous brass and woodwind sections, 2 harps, loads of strings, and some, shall we say, unlikely percussion sounds. In an interview recorded at public radio station KLCC in downtown Eugene, I had a chance to talk with Tim Cogswell, who is the Eugene Symphony's principal percussion. I asked him to describe some of the unusual percussion instruments that Mahler calls for to achieve the emotional effects that he wanted.
Well, before I talk about those, I'll tell you the standard equipment we're using for this series is a snare drum, bass drum, cymbals, bells, xylophone, triangle, tam-tam, which are very typical in a percussion section.
Pretty normal stuff there.
Yeah, pretty normal. And but then Mahler does add another set of timpani. So we have 2 sets of timpani,
Okay.
2 timpanists, which are really fantastic effect when they play together in unison with certain licks. But it's just great. And the second timpanist actually in this piece plays a lot of percussion.
Oh, so does some doubling, plays both timpani and some other things.
Yeah,
well,
tam-tam, triangle, that kind of stuff. So he kind of wrote that in that part. So it's an interesting grouping. Not so usual for a timpanist to have to play percussion.
Okay.
But then as far as the most unusual instruments, somewhat usual are cowbells. He indicates these to be shepherd's bells, and the effect that it creates, it's very interesting. It's more and more of a tranquil effect as the bells kind of ring on and off stage. There's an offstage part for the bells as well as for chimes off stage, and they are real ominous and very mysterious sounding when they come in. And so these cowbells, I think we'll have 3 or 4 bells and graduated pitches, and they'll ring just really ominously and very mystically throughout the section where they come. It kind of gives a real, like you're outdoors in a pasture, you're out in the wilderness, kind of some calmness in the midst of a lot of storm-like music and really powerful music.
Mm-hmm. Really gives you a sense of place, doesn't it?
Oh, yes, exactly. And then the most unusual, I think, is the hammer and box.
Okay. The famous hammer.
Yeah, the famous hammer. In fact, some folks will even call this symphony the hammer and box symphony because it's so unusual. And someone asked me one day, well, how many pieces have hammers in them?
Yeah.
And I said, I don't know. There may be one out there, but I don't know. I know we've had pieces written where we strike a gunny sack full of glass with a hammer to get the effect of breaking glass, but we don't never typically have to hit anything with a hammer.
So this Mahler Sixth Symphony, famous for this couple of moments in the last movement for the hammer. Yeah. Tell us more about the hammer and what you're going to hit with it. Where does this hammer come from? You go down to the hammer store? What do you do?
No, we have to make these hammers. This Mahler was very specific. He asked for a wooden hammer striking a wooden object, in this case a box. He thought that would produce the biggest sound. He was not happy with the sound just of the bass drum alone at these moments. He wanted something more powerful, but not resonant as much as he wanted a thud, but a big thud. And so...
No ordinary thud, mind you.
Exactly, no ordinary thud. So in this particular case, I built this hammer, the one I have, years ago when we did Mahler 6 with, I think it was Miguel Arthbedoya. We did the Mahler cycle. And we played this piece. I made this hammer. It's about 12 pounds. It's about 8 by 8 inch square, about 2 feet long.
The hammer head is
the hammer
2 feet
head,
long.
Yes.
Okay, that's a big hammer.
Exactly. And the handle is probably 6 feet, probably.
Wow.
So it's a nice size. It's very easy to be seen. It's not
hard
too
to miss,
light.
I would think.
Yes. Yeah, it is kind of heavy, but it works well. And we'll have a box that we'll set up, and we'll experiment with getting the best sound out of that box and the hammer.
Okay. Now, I understand there's some question about how many times you're supposed to hit the box with the hammer. What's that all about?
Right. Well, originally Mahler wrote 5 hammer blows in the original score as he was composing, but as he began to rehearse it for the first performance, he took out the other hammer blows and had 3 in the piece, 3 hammer blows. Mm-hmm. And he performed as he conducted the first performance in 1906 of that piece, he did with 3 hammer blows. And as he was apparently a very superstitious gentleman, And he got to thinking about those blows and was worried that he was being prophetic in his own life about how tragedy might follow him. So he took out that third blow. And as it stands without the third blow, a very anticlimactic moment, but in itself creates a very open spot where the hammer would normally be that you might suspect. So people say, well, there should be a three blows because that's kind of the way this works, or should we be true to the music and play only 2? And so the question is, play 2 or play 3 blows? What's the thing to do? Well, some folks play 3 and put it in where the original third was.
Okay.
And that all depends on music director and kind of how we all decide what to do. But it's an interesting mystery to see what will happen. Will there be 3 blows or will there be 2 blows?
All right. I think we just have to wait and find out.
Yeah,
I don't think we should give that away.
That's right.
Tim, maybe we should listen to a clip of a recording of this piece, Mahler's Sixth Symphony, so we can hear how that hammer sounds. It's a recording with conductor Yvonne Fisher. Let's listen to it a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, boy, you really hear that, don't you? You really hear it sort of resonate in the middle of the it's a fairly thick orchestration at that moment, and yet you can't miss the hammer coming in.
Oh, absolutely. You can't miss the sound. It's a big sound. It's also a very visual moment.
Yeah. So, Tim, this piece carries the nickname of Tragic. So, Mahler's Sixth Symphony, the Tragic Symphony. Now, is it really dark and gloomy the whole way through, or are there moments of lightness and hope in it? And maybe as a second question, why should our audiences want to hear this piece, especially now when there seems to be so much turmoil in our everyday lives? Why listen to a piece that's called Tragic?
Right. Well, interestingly enough, as well, in the very beginning, Mahler never included the word tragic with his music. In fact, it wasn't until a year later, after they were performing his piece, that they added this in 1907 into a program note about being tragic. Alma, his wife, would later say that he talked about it being a tragic symphony, but he never intended it to be the name or the title of the symphony. Just Mahler 6 is all he would write. And when I listen to it, and many people do, I get the feeling I got is there's so much beautiful, grand music in this piece, very energetic, very live, very happy and cheerful music. I see it, and I felt when I heard it, as more of a triumphant piece, more of how victorious people can be in life or in a journey. And so I felt it's a very powerful piece. Spine tingling, I guess, is a way that people describe a lot of times in these moments. So I didn't really get a feeling of gloom. Technically, if you analyze the piece, yeah, you could probably see where tragedy wins out at the end, the last few minutes of the piece. In the fourth movement, it sort of dies out and becomes a minor key and begins to go out at kind of a more of a sorrowful note. But I was just really encouraged and delighted when I heard this piece for the first time, and it felt like it was a really one of his greatest works.
Yeah, Mahler, of all composers, there seems such a direct connection between his emotions and what we experience. It's just right out there. There's no hiding what he's feeling. And he goes so quickly from moments of great joy to moments of great despair. They're just sort of juxtaposed side by side. It's a fascinating journey, as are all Mahler symphonies.
Yes, and I would say, too, that, music to the human spirit is really nourishing. And I feel that in the arts, we have not only the responsibility but the privilege to bring people music and art to nourish their souls, nourish their hearts. So I really see this as a very positive event, a very exciting event, and I would encourage everybody to come to hear it.
Percussionist Tim Cogswell talking about Gustav Mahler's Symphony No. 6. The Eugene Symphony performs it on Thursday, October 20th at the Hult Center. More information can be found at eugenesymphony.org. This interview was recorded at public radio station KLCC in downtown Eugene. I'm Scott Freck, Executive Director of the Eugene Symphony, and thanks for listening.